Well, hello everyone. We are here with Ike from Eichlers, and we're going to talk to him about his music project or band, uh, if you will. So the first question I got for you, I like to ask, like, what is like the origin story of you as an artist or your music project?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up like playing in a lot of bands in the Bay Area music scene, and I was playing in a few bands when I was in college, down in San Jose, which is like South Bay, it's like an hour south of San Francisco. Um, and after college, I moved to Salt Lake City, but I was like really coming into, or what I felt like was coming into my own in terms of songwriting. I was Before moving to Salt Lake, I was in a band called Koi,
Mm-hmm.
and where I was the primary like songwriter and lyricist, which I never really been able to do in a band before. That was the first project that I had where I was actually confident in my lyrics, or like didn't hate them the next day after I wrote them. So with sort of that project under my belt and moving to a new city, I wanted to continue writing songs. Obviously wanted to try and do another band, but I didn't know anyone yet. And I had like a little bit of trouble getting into the music scene and meeting the right people in Salt Lake right away. So I started Eichlers as just like an outlet for just all the songs that I had kept writing after Koi was done and after since I'd moved to a new city and a new scene. And so it just became like an acoustic sort of singer songwriter emo project. That was back in 2016. And it just sort of gradually developed over then as I continued writing songs as Eichlers, despite joining other bands in Salt Lake. It was always just like a back burner, just personal project that I kept doing. And then right before the pandemic hit, I started taking it a little more seriously and sort of started adding a lot of electronic and hip hop elements. Got into producing, which I never really fucked with before that. And yeah, just sort of started hitting it more head on and focused. And that's sort of how we ended up where we are today.
Awesome. So this is interesting. I used to live in Utah.
Oh,
So
no
it's
way.
yeah. I moved in 2021 out back east. So I was in Tooele. I don't know if you're aware. If you
Yeah.
yeah, 45
Yeah. West
minutes
side.
west of Salt Lake. So
Totally.
it's kind of funny that we could have crossed paths had I been paying more attention to the music scene in Salt Lake at the time. So
Yeah. Were you involved in, how long were you in
I was in Salt
Tooele?
Lake. I was in Utah for like 10 years, but I
Oh,
wasn't really
dang.
involved in any music stuff out there. Unfortunately, I was
For sure.
raising a family and whatnot. Have
Ah,
a whole
yeah.
mess of children, so that takes up a lot of time. So
For sure.
it's just kind of I focusing on music at this point. So that's cool. So I know a little bit about Salt Lake anyway. So that's cool. Let's talk. I think the first song I heard from yours was "Anthem for a New Tone,"
Oh, cool.
and it has somewhat of a political slant
Yeah.
that really drew me into your music in general. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that song is like a very unique song amongst my discography. I tend to write like more from an emotional standpoint,
mm-hmm.
and just like sort of process my emotions through songs. But living in Utah and living in that sort of
Yes.
like very uh right-wing conservative climate, especially like I wrote that song at the beginning of 2020 with
Mm-hmm.
just like how the pandemic was being handled
Mm-hmm.
and what we were seeing in terms of like all the Black Lives Matter uprisings and all the protests, and just seeing all the reactionary bullshit from all the
Yeah.
right wing folks. It just that's really like what inspired that song. And I think it's cool that that's like the first song you heard, because that's, like I said, it's a very strange track amongst my discography. I still feel like it fits like sound wise,
Yeah.
right? But content wise, it's I haven't written a song like that since. Um because yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I feel like political songs are really important just because it's easier to get a message out through
Mm-hmm.
the medium of art. But I feel like instead of writing political songs, I tend to try and be political in my actions in my daily life rather than,
Yeah.
writing about it.
Yep.
Mostly just because I have a hard time putting that stuff like into words. Like I
Yeah.
feel like putting that stuff into actions is more effective in real time than it is for me to sit down and try and put the energy into writing a song
Yeah.
about it and choosing the right
Yeah.
wordings to get my point across.
Direct action is definitely the way to go first and foremost, but it's nice to jam out to a good political song.
For sure. Yeah.
Uh, Definitely a
Yeah.
choice
And I'm
topic for me.
absolutely, yeah. And I'm not like talking down on anyone who writes political
Yeah,
songs, obviously, because I've, being in the ska scene and the new tone
for
scene
real.
and
Yeah.
that stuff, like there's so many great songwriters out there who are writing that type of stuff. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like me personally, I find it really hard to write about that stuff without it sounding really contrived and corny.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I got one that like helps to connect
Yeah,
with
for
people and
sure.
is shit that I believe in. Like
Exactly. So you mentioned New Tone. I want to talk about that a little bit too. So can you explain to everybody what that is, and if you happen to know, because I've wondered who coined the term New Tone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, new tone was coined by Bad Operation from New
Nice.
Orleans, Louisiana. It's funny when I was like really getting like gearing up to sort of pursue Eichlers as like the electronic music project that we have today. I
Mm-hmm.
was incorporating ska elements and I'm like a huge fan of wordplay and puns. So like I thought of the phrase new tone and I was just like, oh, it'd be really cool if I like release these weird hyper pop emo rap ska songs and then call it new tone and then like I think a couple months later, Bad Operation debuted with like as the new tone band. I was like, they beat me to it. That's cool. Uh, I mean,
um,
they probably had the term like way before I did,
it's
but yeah, yeah, it definitely came from Bad Operation were like the flag bearers
nice.
of that term, and then everyone just sort of, everyone who's like in that scene
Mm-hmm.
and um sort of culture started using it to describe the group of musicians and community that
Mm-hmm.
we're all a part of. I mean, a lot of
Yes.
that like revolves around Bad Time Records, who put out the
Yes.
Bad Operation record, but also just like adjacent bands and artists
Mm-hmm.
because we're not trying to be like uh elitist or exclusive. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
all about inclusivity. As
Mm-hmm.
long as your politics are inclusive, that's like what it comes down
Yep.
to, right?
Inclusive
It's
people hanging
supposed to
out with
mirror.
inclusive people. Yep.
For sure. Yeah, it's supposed to evoke the politics of
Mm-hmm.
the two-tone
Yep.
movement back in the late 70s.
Exactly.
Um
Definitely better than fourth wave ska as
for
a
sure.
as a name. So.
Yeah, and it's really funny when like people outside of the ska scene and outside of ska and punk like find my music because I'm involved in like electronic music circles
Mm-hmm.
and people who like don't listen to ska or for whom ska is purely like a nostalgic like bro I love Tony Hawk type genre. Like people hear my music and they're like dude fourth wave just dropped or like um yeah, so I always try and make a point and like I think it's fun when people say that and like to describe my music, but like being in the ska scene and in the ska community, as like
Mm-hmm.
the wave thing is so played out at this point because it's not
Exactly.
like people ever stopped making
Oh
ska
no,
after
it never
after Real
did.
Big Fish and Goldfinger like fell out of
Yeah.
popularity.
Yep. There's some of the third wave bands never stopped, and then there's a whole bunch of bands making it now that, like you mentioned, Bad Time has some really good stuff, and Ska Punk International
Yeah, shout out
also
Ska Punk
has,
International, huge fan.
yeah, great bands on that label as well. So let's talk about your Checkered Future album.
Yeah,
Uh
my checkered future.
yes, that is your last major album release, or because you drop so much stuff on Spotify, but that's the last record that got pressed, correct, for you?
Correct. Yeah, that's my most recent full length.
Yes. Um, Great songs on that one. I'm a
Thank
big
you.
fan of My Checkered Future. Is there any songs that you are particularly proud of from that album that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I think the title track for sure. Like, I've listened to that record so many fucking times because I had it completed for so long before it actually saw the light of day.
Mm-hmm.
It was mostly finished by like mid 2020.
Oh, and
Um
that
and
came
then
out in 2022.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
March of yeah, we started rolling it out in March of last year. Um so like, the songs are very, very old hat for me, but I feel like the title track especially I'm really proud of. I just as I'm sort of knee deep into writing the next record right now. Like
oh,
after we're done with this interview, I'm gonna go record some demos.
nice.
So I've like started writing for it and I have like a great idea of what I want the next record to be. But when I think about like the title track, My Checkered Future, just that those lyrics in the chorus, like, man, how am I gonna top that? That's so fucked up. Like,
Yeah.
and I've met so many people like who like connect with the lyrics I wrote that I never, being like a young music fan and coming up
Mm-hmm.
through DIY and playing in bands that never sort of reached any sort of potential or made a real fan base outside of our immediate scene or community. It's just mind blowing to me to like meet people on Twitter who have my lyric, like the whiny emo rude boy loser line, like in their Twitter bios. That blows my fucking mind. That's so
I,
cool.
I was just
And
telling
just
my wife today that was my theme song. So
totally, yeah. That's the anthem. And it's so humbling that it's connected with so many people because that's like that's real. That's like how I feel. That's not posturing or taking any sort of
mm-hmm.
artistic license. That's like, as corny as it might sound, that's from the heart. Like that's me.
Yep. It really
Yeah,
connects with me as well. So that's definitely my number one pick from that album.
totally. Thank
Um,
you.
so I've got a couple more questions to ask you.
Sure.
This next one's just for my own personal morbid curiosity.
Your morbid
Um,
obsessions, if you will.
yes, that's an amazing reference
Yep.
to "We Are the Union's" last album. Great
Shout out.
album. Yep.
Huge fan.
Uh,
New Tone Classic.
yes. Huge fan of them. So I believe it's the song "Shout Me Out." You make a couple references to Magic the Gathering. Are you a
Yeah.
fan? Do you play?
Um, Historically, yes. Currently, no.
Okay.
Um, Magic the Gathering was like a huge thing when I was little. I grew up like I did swim team for 12
Mm-hmm.
years when I was little. It's like a huge thing out, and I guess it's like a big, like recreational swimming is a big thing like all over the United States, but very much so like in the area of California where
Mm-hmm.
I'm from. And me and my friends growing up, that was like how we passed time in between like swim races was playing Magic the Gathering. So
Awesome.
I stopped playing in like probably in like high school,
Mm.
but I still have my cards somewhere. I think shit, I might have sold them, but it definitely just got to the point where I was like pursuing music and like
Uh-huh.
wanting to play guitar more than I was wanting to play Magic the Gathering.
Yep.
So like the concepts and like the nostalgia associated with Magic the
Mm-hmm.
Gathering is still there, but
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't currently play anymore, and
Ah,
nor do I have the funds to
yeah.
sustain that kind of habit.
It's an expensive hobby.
That's
Yeah.
that's the problem.
Yeah.
At least for me.
Yeah. I don't mention it a lot on this show, but I have a Magic podcast, so I'm still
Oh
very
hell yeah.
heavily into the scene. So
That's so tight.
yeah.
Well
Very
then
cool.
that lyric's for you.
Yeah.
Like
I was listening to it the other day. I was driving. I was like, wait a minute.
yeah, I'm glad that that one connected,
Yep.
because I'm super proud of that line. I was walking to my job a few years ago when I wrote it. I worked at a liquor store, and I was walking to my job and listening to that instrumental demo I made, and that line just popped into my head, and I just like started giggling, which is sort of become my indicator that, oh, this is going to be a good line. I'm not going to hate this in a couple days.
Yeah.
So
It's
I just like couldn't stop laughing at that line when I
definitely
wrote it.
amazing. Well, if you ever want to start
Thanks.
playing again and you get some money to blow, hit me up.
I absolutely will.
All right.
It's a big if, but thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. No worries. I understand. I've had people I've played with back in high school that are like, "Yeah, I can't do that, or it's going to consume my life. I can't get back in there." I'm
Yeah.
like,
I
"That's
guess I guess
fair."
that's probably something I'm scared of. I'm trying to
Yeah.
trying to hit this music shit hard
Yeah.
when I
Well,
should be hitting the cards.
let's keep you in the music because you make some really good stuff.
Okay, if you insist.
Okay. Two last things. I'd like you to pick a
Sure thing.
song to play us out for the show from your discography.
Ooh. Um, let's go with Be Happy from my most recent project. I put out a mixtape of like all the tracks that I sort of had in the works while I was waiting for My Checkered Future to be released, called Days Before MCF. And
Yes.
that's the song from the project that at least right now I'm most proud of, because I'm sort of viewing that one as the bridge between My Checkered Future and this next record.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I
Awesome.
feel like
Awesome.
it's got a foot in both. So I feel like that's gonna be a good bridge. And like I said, that's what I'm feeling now. I think the song's a lot of fun. It's got some silly lines that make me giggle. So
All right. Well, we'll play everyone out with that song, and now just take a minute or two to give you the floor. You can shout anybody out you want. Tell everybody where to find you. Um, you know, give some shout outs.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to shout out Old Phone. That's my sometimes live DJ based in LA. They run a tape label called Solidarity Club Records. They put out an incredible album this year called Not Anymore via Lonely Ghost Records, who I should also shout out, based in Ohio. Does a lot of awesome things in the emo and sort of weird electronic misfit scenes. Yeah, shout out Old Phone, shout out John from Lonely Ghost Records. I want to shout out Big Money Cybergrind. I've like recently got really into the cybergrind scene because I feel like I did a tweet about this the other day. Like the cybergrind and the ska scenes, I feel like are making the most, at least to me, the most exciting music in DIY and just like sort of again misfit culture right
Mm-hmm.
now that like I feel like deserves way more notoriety because there's so much like art and creativity that's happening in that scene. So shout out Big Money Cybergrind. Shout out Bad Operation, Bad Time Records, Ska Punk International. Yeah. You can find me everywhere at Eichlers, Eichlers _. You can stream my music on Spotify. I have vinyl copies of My Checkered Future available on my link tree and through the Bad Time Records store. There's also a special variant available through Brooklyn Vegan. I believe that one's only limited to 100, and I think there's a few copies left. So if you are hearing this for the first time and you like my stuff, go check that out. Pick up a record. It would help me out a lot. And tell your friends. That's the most important thing. Like with algorithms controlling our lives, there's still like no sort of comparison for how great getting a recommendation from someone you trust and a friend for a new band or artist helps. So talk to your friends, talk to your peers about music you like, especially if it's DIY stuff like you play on the show, because that helps the most.
Mm-hmm.
As yeah,
Awesome.
that's what I
Thank
got.
you. Okay, everyone. That's the show. I really appreciate everybody from tuning in. We'll say goodbye to Ike here, and then we'll play us out with Be Happy.
Bye. Thanks, Dave.
Yep. Thank you.